Well, hello and welcome to the unofficial Unreal Engine podcast, where we talk about all things Unreal Engine and also the Lisan Al Gaib. We're your hosts. My name's Alex, and next to me, welcome back, is
Jacob. Wow, that was a good one. I really wasn't expecting that for some reason.
Did you see Dune 2?
I did, and that's oh man, that's a topic for another time.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for everyone tuning in. Make sure like, rate, comment, subscribe wherever you are, wherever you're watching. We got a bit of a special episode today. Some news came out about Unreal Engine that we felt couldn't wait, and unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to record a full episode this evening. But we figured get on here, chat about this topic, and give you a little mini episode. Alex, do you want to talk about what that topic is?
Yeah, I was expecting this announcement to come at GDC, but a little bit earlier, which hopefully means that there's so much that's going to be announced at GDC that they didn't want to have this crowd any of the attention of it. Epic today announced their pricing strategy. Of course, back in Unreal Fest, there was the announcement from Tim Sweeney that Epic was going to begin to charge similarly to what Unity had done to try to capture some of the non-gaming market, and that details would be revealed the next year. And now we have those details.
Yes, we do. And I gotta say, I got to look over it a little bit. I mean, it's pretty much what Tim Sweeney said he would do, and that's a good thing. And the way they handled it was much better. So I'm assuming now you can kind of talk about the conversation you had with Epic when they came to you. Can we kind of start there or
Yes, I do want to be careful because when Epic came to speak about this, there are some things that we spoke about that are a little bit different from what is here. And I think all I can comment on that is I think it's nice that there were these ongoing discussions with studios and all that, because I think Epic listened. Like, I think there was maybe some feedback and certain things got adjusted. But this is 95% of what was discussed. The long and the short of it is that everything still remains free. If you or your company is making under $1 million a year, go wild, use Unreal Engine as much as you want. If you are making more than $1 million a year, it is a $1,850 annual seat license, and that is a floating license. So if you've got independent contractors or people moving around, those can be adjusted. If you are making plugins for Unreal Engine, though, you remain a happy content creator, and even if you make $12 billion, Epic isn't going to take any more than that 12% cut that they already take. So you're totally free and clear there. Education, all that remains totally free. The gaming is still exactly the same as it was, nothing until after $1 million, and then they take a 5% cut. And some of the biggest news that I think came out of this was actually that Twinmotion and reality capture are now going to be packaged in with Unreal. If you're making less than $1 million, they're totally free. And then if you're making more than $1 million, it is part of that license. Also, if you, for some reason, don't want Unreal Engine, but you do want just Twinmotion or just reality capture, there are also individual fees for that, but you cannot get just Unreal Engine because the goal is for all of this to merge into one software, very similarly to how Fab is going to be, taking the marketplace and Quixel assets and Sketchfab and having that all together. It looks like they're hoping the future of Unreal Engine has Twinmotion and reality capture. Maybe it's just plugins that get enabled if you want them.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna open up with a hot take here, and that I think $1,800 is cheap.
Yeah.
I think that's more reasonable, honestly, than I thought it was going to be. I just looked it up to remind myself, and it's almost exactly the same cost as a year-long Maya license. And comparing the feature sets between Maya, don't get me wrong, animators don't come after me. They aren't the exact same thing, they're not for the exact same use case. And you could definitely argue that Unreal Engine doesn't have a lot of the animation tool set yet that typical Maya users might be looking for. But generally speaking, man, if you're comparing the two, you're buying, do I want to buy a seat Maya versus Unreal Engine for the same price? I feel like that's pretty much a no-brainer, right? For a studio. Can contextually, a Houdini license is at least twice that.
Hmm.
And a nuke license is closer to three times that. Um, so yeah, it seems cheap, to be honest.
Yeah. I think they definitely could have gotten away with making the price higher, and they probably could have tiered it more as well. They could have said like between $1 million and $5 million, it's this price, and they could have gone up and up and up. And if you're Disney, maybe every Unreal Engine license is $100,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
They probably could have gotten away with some of that, but I think what they're doing now is very generous, and I think it's totally reasonable. You can understand how a company like Epic that originally thought of everything outside of gaming that people were using Unreal Engine for to be just kind of a nice bonus that they weren't really focused on. So many of those industries have become really significant now, from virtual production to filmmaking in general, to simulation and visualization, XR, of course, and it totally makes sense. And I think it's totally fair that they should be able to capture some of the profit that comes out of that. And I say this very much as someone who's been riding the wave of free Unreal Engine for many years now.
Yeah, for sure. I think it totally makes sense what they're doing, and I get the feeling that they didn't introduce any sort of tiering to keep the math simple, like, and to avoid so many potential like snag. I mean, we saw with the Unity situation how easy it was for one poorly defined, like rule in this agreement to blow up in their faces. And it sounds like, they did plenty of research with potential users. But I mean, it makes the math simple. Do I or do I not make over $1 million? Am I making games? Pretty easy questions to ask and to figure out how much it's going to cost you moving forward. But I think this works, is what I'd imagine. Like I think there probably is a niche group of people who I kind of wonder about, like the ArcViz space. Definitely, I'm interested to hear how that's kind of bucketed in here. I assume that means it's non-gaming, but there are plenty of ArcViz, shops out there that probably are on the borderline of that, those revenue, or make much higher, but their margins are so much slimmer than other types of companies. So I do question that a little bit, but maybe the idea is that they were already paying for Twinmotion, maybe. And so this is just like an up level. You get the full feature set. We're going to toss in Twinmotion to make this kind of worth your while.
Yeah, there's a simplicity to all this that I think is quite nice, even if we see places where like it might not work perfectly. I've read through what this is what's happening for Unreal Engine 2 times now, and I feel like it's all perfectly reasonable for me to remember. I probably never will have to look at this page again, versus I still couldn't tell you off the top of my head of all the different ways that Unity and Unity Pro and Unity Industry and all these different iterations get used in different capacities, and who has to pay when. And then, oh yeah, if you want, to develop for Apple Vision Pro, that's a Unity Pro license, and all these weird little caveats of how things work. But the short version for someone like me is Unity, very complicated and potentially expensive for me to use. Unreal, very affordable.
Right. Yeah. What was the license cost for Unity Pro? It was like 3,000.
Oh, good question. Yeah, I think it was 2,000 something. Let me look that up real quick. Unity 3D Pro license cost. It is 2,000 a year. Yeah, $2,040. That's Unity Pro, and then Unity Enterprise is $3,000 a year, and then UIC, I have no idea what UIC stands for, is about $3,000 a year.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's bizarre, and the fact that, and another thing that's quite nice that Unity also got a lot of flack for, I think they've reversed it since this original decision, but none of this goes backward in time. So like if you are making $30 million a year right now, making ArcViz experiences in Unreal Engine, and you're like, I don't want to pay for any of that, fine, you can be a miser. All you have to do is stick with Unity 5.3 or before.
Right.
If you want to be doing, baked lighting and ray tracing in Unreal Engine 4.27 for the rest of your career, more power to you. You totally can. One other thing I wanted to mention about this as well is UDN is changing in a pretty significant way.
Oh,
This is
okay.
something that I probably spoke the most about with the folks at Epic who wanted to talk to me. Did you see this part, Jacob?
No, I did not.
So UDN, for those who don't know, stands for the Unreal Developer Network. This is something that companies in the past have been able to pay for on a per-seat basis to basically get direct access to Epic employees as a way to talk directly to, the actual people making Unreal Engine. And it's a useful resource for, kind of private posting for this kind of stuff. So I want to make sure I don't say anything because this is where some of the stuff is different from what I chatted about with what is happening at the moment.
Yeah.
But right now, it's going to be much more difficult for you to become a UDN licensee. Like for me, my company just had to have a quick negotiation with Epic. We got like an annual fee for one license, and then we're able to post questions on UDN. But at the end of this year, when that expires for us, we won't be able to renew that at whatever rate that we had. Every company had to negotiate their own rate for UDN, and I
Oh,
probably
wow.
yeah, I'm probably not even allowed to say like what our rate is because it might make another company jealous. But moving forward, it's going to be $1,500 per seat for UDN, but you cannot even purchase that unless you have at least 10 licenses.
Oh, okay.
So I think they're trying to like filter this down to fewer companies. My guess would be Epic has been like a little bit internally overwhelmed by how many different people are asking questions in UDN, and they'd rather focus on the bigger fish clients in order to make this a little bit different. So
I think that makes
yeah.
total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to be changing though is Epic is pushing a lot more toward the forums. A piece of very open feedback I gave was that I think the forums need a lot of work to have the usability improved. I don't know if anyone has tried to access the forums on Chrome. I don't think this is like an extension I have or anything, but I can't scroll in the forums on Chrome. There's like a big invisible window that's blocking most of the pages, so I have to use Firefox or another browser, and it's really hard to use. And sometimes like things don't log in or refresh properly, and it can be difficult to like cross-link things. Anyway, they want to push a lot more people toward using the forums to get their questions answered, both from Epic employees, people like, Victor Broden and XR, who's always trying to help out the community. And then also for learning content when people post things there. They kind of want that to become the one-stop shop for 95% of the questions people might have about Unreal Engine. I just hope that, that all improves. And there's one other thing about UDN related to that while Jacob says something, I'm going to scroll through here and see if it's mentioned directly, because if they do mention it, I want to say it. If they haven't, then maybe it's not something they're ready to talk about.
Yeah. What I will say is that forums have kind of, in a lot of cases, seemingly gone out of style in exchange for Discords and Slacks and stuff like that. Sure. I miss old forums. And honestly, I haven't hung out in the Unreal Engine forums in quite a while. But I know they redid them and they redid UDN, and I guess it just really didn't suit the needs. But yeah, I mean, I remember hearing from Epic back, man, this must have been like 2018, 2019, that their so like their engineers would get notifications when like UDN messages weren't answered fast enough. Like engineers would, which I mean, for folks who haven't been like part of a company that has an engineering org, like engineers getting notifications about customer stuff is just like, what, that there would be riots, at most companies for that sort of thing. So yeah, I that was pretty wild, and I guess at some point it must have stopped being scalable. But
yeah, cool. Anything else we want to cover on that? There's one other thing I want to show you before we have to call it quits for our short episode.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. So I thought you, Jacob, might enjoy getting a little bit of an update on Apple Vision Pro with Unreal Engine.
I would.
Yeah. So something that happened on Friday was in the 5.5 main branch on the GitHub, there was a new ability added for modifying the PLIST list file in order to enable actual hand tracking. And so I realized then, as long as we are able to have hand tracking, then we can start to actually do things like trigger events when the fingers get close together. I was having a lot of trouble getting things like teleport to work in an expected way, so I abandoned that after a little bit and then started to mess around with some other things over the weekend. So first of all, I realized that the Swift UI is actually a file that exists and can be modified like any other Swift file. So that will just package along with Unreal Engine. So it gives even Unreal Engine developers a reason to learn Swift. Then I created a blueprint function library that basically was detecting when certain bones are touching. So index, pointer, and index thumb. And then as long as you're within a certain threshold, it's basically acting as a simple Boolean. And here I'm kind of setting up tilt brush controls to allow the world to scale up, scale down, rotate. You can grab objects. There's all sorts of, different functionality there. It's very similar to some of the ways that we allowed people to watch Christmas Carol using the grip buttons on controllers. I also managed to get finger guns working. So you can actually pick up the weapon in the VR template, and then just by kind of shaking your middle finger on top of your index finger, it, will continue to fire the weapon, which is kind of interesting. I saw a different implementation of finger guns that I'd like to try where someone does it literally from just like shaking your fingers. So I imagine it's like some kind of reading of the velocity of what your fingers are doing, and then that is able to fire a weapon as well. I also need to redo how the snapping works here, since everything's kind of sideways. I've got like a whatever you call that cross guard kind of setup. I also had a little blueprint I was testing where you can have this plane snap to different surfaces. And I think this will be particularly cool when you actually are scanning your space properly, because then you can actually, snap things that are made in Unreal Engine to your walls and floors in your actual space. And then once Unreal Engine, or once Apple Vision Pro, the OS actually has proper persistence, then, these things can actually stay in your space all the time, which I think will be kind of cool.
That'd be really cool for photos on your walls.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's kind of an elegant system. So the core idea is you're just pinching with your left and your right hand. If you're pinching with just one hand, you're going to move around the world. If you're pinching with two hands and you're grabbing nothing, you're scaling the world. And then if you grab an object and pinch with two fingers, you're scaling that particular object, including the pistol there, if you want to have a giant pistol. So that's mostly what I was playing with. And then most recently, I found that if I switched from deferred rendering to forward rendering, this actually enables an empty sky to become pass-through. It's really glitchy here, and that actually has to do more with the scale than anything. I'd really like to find a way to improve the frame rate. But essentially, we're starting to find some ways to embed this content more in a physical environment, which is kind of cool. So that's just a very quick flyby of like the latest of what's going on. Vision OS costs nothing to develop for Unreal Engine. If anyone downloads the main 5.5 branch right now ahead of 5.4 actually coming out, it's very, very simple to get started. It used to be you had to do a bunch of stuff in Xcode and, change certain settings about like Metal APIs and all that. Now it's essentially you open up the VR template, you make sure mobile multi-view is disabled, you enable the Apple Vision OpenXR plugin, and then you are able to package, and then you're going to have something working. To actually do stuff like the hand tracking stuff here, you would need to play in blueprints like I did, but it's really cool how simple they're making this. You don't need to open up Xcode at all. You literally package a .app file, which can be dragged and dropped directly into the devices and simulators window, and it will wirelessly install to your headset.
That's awesome. So question, because of the forward rendering thing, if you have like an empty scene, so like without any actors, anything, and on a normal screen it'd just be black.
Right.
Does it show up as transparent? And
yes,
it does.
Yeah. Yeah, so the next step would be, I think, actually figuring out a way to make a pass-through material. So, you could have like the dinosaur experience in Apple Vision Pro. You could do that with literally just two planes, and it's pass-through, and it's opening up and showing you this world of digital content. And, Vario and Meta have versions of that. I've tried modifying what they've made, and it hasn't worked here. But for now, it's basically like anything that's like alpha, any kind of empty space is going to render as pass-through. Yeah.
Interesting. So you could probably get away with, I wonder if you could do, for example, like a post-process material that just clears out the pixels around, it'd probably be super expensive, but I'm curious about that sort of thing. And my second quick question is the performance. Like what is the performance of Unreal on Apple Vision Pro?
It's pretty glitchy right now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the VR template, as we know, is a very simple scene, and I tried it both with deferred and forward. Doesn't seem to be much of a performance difference either way. Everything kind of feels like it's maybe like a frame behind. It almost feels almost like how WebXR pixel streaming feels to me right now. Like there's some kind of latency, like there's too many pipes that everything has to go through. And my hope is that we see some improvements to that before the official release. But for now, it's just a great little sandbox to get started with. And it's very cool to see my own hands and arms and environment inside an Unreal Engine scene like this.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll see lots to come. That's for sure. I can't wait until people really get unhandcuffed here.
Right. Oh, and by the way, one other thing that came out of the announcement about the pricing, it seems like Epic also revealed that the target release for Unreal Engine 5.4 is late April. So that was like a little side note where they're like these changes for pricing go active in late April because that's when 5.4 will be coming out.
Yep. So we'll learn more at GDC, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine they're also trying to capture some of the motion graphics market because that's one of the big new things that'll be coming out with 5.4 is the Project Avalanche stuff. And so if you want to use that and you're making some money, you'll need to be paying for it.
Well, I'm excited. That's
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to do one more episode before GDC and just maybe review the roadmap and give a few predictions, and then we'll see what came true.
Yeah, guess we'll see.
Cool. All right. Quick episode.
Quick episode. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back hopefully pretty soon here before GDC to chat more. But let us know. Do you like short little segments? Do you like shorter episodes? I'm curious to hear some feedback. So we'll catch you guys soon.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.